No protests, no courtroom battles, just one signature, one tariff, wiped $146.3 billion off Tesla's empire like it was nothing. Overnight, every Tesla in the country doubled in price.
A 100% tariff wasn't just a tax, it was a message. Tesla is no longer welcome here. And it worked. Dealerships froze. Orders vanished. A $66 million Starlink contract? Canceled. Not because of inflation, not because of demand, because Canada wanted blood. Stocks obliterated. But here's the part no one's talking about. This wasn't just a business move. This was retaliation, a political chess match. And Tesla? It was the sacrificial pawn. So why did Canada go nuclear? Why did the global EV king collapse like a house of cards? And what's about to hit consumers, workers, and the entire economy next? Keep watching, because the final twist will leave you stunned. Canada's second strike. They didn't stop at Tesla. Canada came for Musk's satellites next, and cut him off completely. The second blow was surgical and unexpected. The Canadian government terminated a $66 million contract with Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite internet company. This wasn't a simple business decision. It was a political statement. Starlink had been contracted to provide internet coverage to hundreds of remote communities across Canada, particularly in northern and rural regions, where conventional broadband infrastructure was impossible to build. For many of these communities, the Starlink deal meant access to education, healthcare, and modern communication for the very first time. But the Canadian authorities made it clear they would not continue doing business with a man whose companies, in their view, were complicit in undermining their economic sovereignty. The message was chilling. Canada was willing to sacrifice digital progress in its own remote regions to punish Musk. The government framed the decision as a national security and economic sovereignty measure. Their official statement read bluntly, "We will not fund those who destroy our economy." For Musk, it was a devastating loss. The $66 million deal was not just a financial contract. It was an entry point into one of the largest and most underserved internet markets in the world. With a stroke of the pen, Canada erased that opportunity and made it personal. Musk's attempt to reshape global internet access now had a Canadian roadblock. And yet, the retaliation didn't stop there. If the tariffs and contract termination were federal strikes, the next attack came from the ground up. Provinces and local governments turning against Tesla. This is war, and things are about to get only worse for Tesla. But before we get into all the little details, do me a favor and hit the subscribe. Thanks. The rebate rebellion. It wasn't just Ottawa. Canada's provinces joined the war, stripping Tesla's privileges one by one. The most visible blow came from British Columbia, one of Tesla's strongest markets in Canada. The provincial government announced that, effective immediately, Tesla vehicles and products would no longer qualify for any provincial rebate programs. For years, British Columbia had subsidized electric vehicle adoption with generous rebates, up to $5,000 Canadian dollars per vehicle. Tesla customers had benefited enormously, with thousands of cars sold thanks to these discounts. But now those rebates were gone. And the timing was no accident. The province justified the move by saying they no longer wanted to support a company aligned with anti-Canadian economic interests. But it was more than political theater. Other provinces quickly followed suit, reviewing their own rebate programs and hinting at similar restrictions. For Tesla, this was death by 1,000 cuts. The ripple effect was immediate. Tesla dealerships across British Columbia reported a sharp decline in foot traffic. Prospective buyers vanished. Forums and online groups filled with frustrated would-be customers, calculating how much more expensive a Tesla had become without local rebates, on top of federal tariffs. In many cases, the combined cost increase made purchasing a Tesla nearly impossible for middle-class Canadians. And while Musk's supporters hoped this would be the end of it, Canada's economic offensive was just warming up. The financial markets were about to react, and not in Tesla's favor. Wall Street panic. $146.3 billion wiped out. When Vanguard and BlackRock start dumping shares, you know it's serious. But they weren't the only ones. Within days of Canada's tariff announcement and the cancellation of the Starlink contract, Wall Street erupted in panic. Tesla's stock price, already under pressure from slowing sales and global competition, began a freefall that wiped out $146.3 billion in market value in less than 30 days. The sell-off wasn't limited to retail investors. Major institutional holders, including the Vanguard Group and BlackRock fund advisors, began quietly reducing their positions in Tesla. Their actions sent a clear signal. The Canadian retaliation was not an isolated political spat. It was a material threat to Tesla's financial stability. Media headlines exploded. Analysts revised their price targets downward, citing the combined impact of Canadian tariffs, public backlash, and shrinking international markets. By the time the dust settled, Tesla's valuation had plummeted by nearly 30%, its worst decline since the early days of the company. Behind the numbers, there was something far more dangerous unfolding: fear. Investors who had tolerated Musk's political antics and aggressive business strategies began to lose faith in his ability to protect their money. Canadian policymakers had done more than slap tariffs. They had cracked Tesla's armor and exposed the company's vulnerability. But this financial panic was only the first sign of something larger. As Musk struggled to contain the bleeding, a cultural and consumer rebellion was already brewing. And what came next would not be measured in stock prices. It would be written in graffiti, vandalism, and shame. A brand in hiding, Tesla owners peel off logos in shame. Once a badge of pride, now a symbol of shame. That is the brutal reality facing thousands of Tesla owners around the world. Just a few years ago, the Tesla logo was a status symbol, a declaration that you were part of the future, an early adopter of electric mobility, a tech-savvy pioneer following the vision of Elon Musk. Today, that same logo has become a liability. It is a mark that invites judgment, controversy, and in some cases, outright hostility. Across North America and Europe, a growing number of Tesla drivers are making an unusual choice. They are peeling the logos off their cars, covering badges with tape, or repainting their vehicles entirely. On social media platforms, videos are going viral of owners painstakingly removing the iconic T emblem from their hoods and trunks. Some are going even further, swapping Tesla wheels, altering the car's software displays, and disguising their vehicles just to avoid the embarrassment of being associated with Musk's political statements. What sparked this sudden wave of shame? For many, it is not about the technology. The electric vehicles themselves have not changed, but the meaning behind them has. Tesla, once seen as a symbol of progress and sustainability, is now increasingly tied to political extremism, corporate arrogance, and divisive culture wars. In places like California and British Columbia, where progressive values dominate, Tesla drivers report being heckled, side-eyed, or even confronted for driving a car associated with a man they no longer support. But hiding the logo is only the beginning of Tesla's public image crisis. What followed next escalated far beyond quiet shame. Vandalism and violence. Tesla under attack worldwide. one that triggered this crisis. It was Musk's own words. The man who once built an empire by inspiring millions has now become Tesla's greatest liability. Over the past few years, Musk's public statements have grown increasingly political, inflammatory, and divisive. He has positioned himself as an ally of conservative movements, openly attacked progressive governments, and inserted himself into culture wars that had nothing to do with electric vehicles. For Tesla's global customer base, this has been catastrophic. In Europe, where environmental consciousness and social progressivism drive consumer behavior, Musk's political statements were seen as a betrayal. In Canada, Musk's close association with the American president made Tesla a natural target when Ottawa retaliated against Washington's tariffs. And in the United States, the very people who once waited months for a Model 3 now see the company as a symbol of the political polarization they despise. Musk's tweets, public interviews, and political endorsements have turned Tesla into something it was never supposed to be: a political weapon. Customers who once proudly drove their Teslas are now hiding their cars, fearful not of the product, but of the meaning attached to it. But it did not stop there. The damage Musk caused to his brand's reputation was not limited to public perception. It spilled over into hard sales figures, operational turmoil, and market collapse, especially in one region where Tesla's fall from grace was most dramatic. Europe turns away. Tesla entire structure depended on rigid internal supply chains. Delays multiplied. Production costs soared. And one model after another, starting with the highly anticipated Model 2, fell behind schedule. Worse, competitors capitalized on Tesla's rigidity. Chinese brands like BYD and NIO quickly rerouted their supply chains, locking in new battery suppliers and slashing costs. Tesla, trapped in its own vertical maze, could only watch as production deadlines slipped and customer frustration grew. But Tesla's failure wasn't limited to its internal operations. While the company struggled behind the scenes, the electric vehicle market itself had evolved and left Tesla behind. The spiral. Every price cut was supposed to save Tesla. Instead, it pushed customers away. Faced with falling demand, canceled contracts, and a collapsing workforce, Elon Musk did what he had done so many times before. He slashed prices. Model 3 and Model Y prices were cut repeatedly over the past year, sometimes by thousands of dollars in a single month. At first, the discounts sparked headlines. Customers lined up to get a deal. But the strategy quickly backfired. Tesla had conditioned the market to expect constant price cuts. Potential buyers started to wait, not just weeks, but months, believing that the next price drop would be even bigger. Every discount eroded consumer trust, and every new price cut undercut the value of Teslas already sold. This vicious cycle turned demand into quicksand. The more prices fell, the more customers delayed their purchase. And as Tesla's margins evaporated, the company's financial flexibility to innovate and expand disappeared. Meanwhile, used Tesla owners faced another crisis. Their vehicles' resale values plunged, turning what was once seen as an investment in the future into a depreciating liability. Loyal customers who had stood by the brand now felt burned, trapped with vehicles worth far less than they paid. But the real consequence of this failed strategy wasn't financial. It was existential. Tesla had lost control of its own narrative. Once the undisputed leader of the electric vehicle revolution, the company now appeared desperate, reactive, and dangerously close to collapse. And yet the structural failures inside Tesla were only part of the story. Beyond the factory walls and falling demand, an even bigger storm was brewing, one that would reshape the entire economy: the EV price crisis, when used cars cost more than new ones. The Tesla collapse isn't just hurting the company, it's wrecking the entire car market. What started as a political slap from Canada quickly spiraled into something no one expected: a full-scale pricing disaster that reached every dealership, rental lot, and car-sharing app across North America. When Tesla's production lines slowed and its sales froze, the ripple effects triggered a shortage no automaker could fix. As Tesla pulled out of Canada and demand collapsed globally, dealers were suddenly sitting on a shrinking supply of electric vehicles. The result? Prices skyrocketed, not just for Teslas, but for almost every electric vehicle on the market. In some cities, used Tesla vehicles were selling for more than the sticker price of a new one, simply because there were none left to buy. Consumers desperate for electric vehicles faced bidding wars, inflated lease payments, and even waiting lists for used cars. The rental and rideshare sectors felt it too. Companies that once relied on Tesla vehicles to modernize their fleets now scrambled to replace aging models, only to find skyrocketing prices and no inventory. That shortage pushed fares higher, making electric ride-sharing more expensive for everyday people. But the economic fallout didn't stop with consumers. As car prices soared and availability collapsed, pressure mounted on political leaders who had promised affordability, growth, and stability. And no one felt that pressure more than the man sitting in the White House. But before I get into that, let me ask you, did you subscribe? It's so easy, especially for you, but it means a lot to us. So do it. Thanks. Washington's dilemma. Trump trapped by auto collapse. Trump's trade wars. Come back. As Canada's tariffs crushed Tesla's Canadian sales, the Mexican government took its own shot at Musk's empire. But Mexico didn't target customers. It targeted the factory floors. In a calculated move, Mexican authorities announced restrictions on the export of key Tesla components, including batteries and electronic modules assembled in Monterrey and Juarez. These parts weren't optional. They were essential to every vehicle rolling off Tesla's production lines in Texas and California. Mexico's message was clear. If the United States continued to escalate tariffs and trade policies, Mexico would protect its own economy at Tesla's expense. The country immediately opened new trade talks with China and the European Union, signaling that Tesla's supply chain might permanently shift away from North America. This wasn't just a supply disruption. It was a strategic shift. Without those components, Tesla's production schedules collapsed. Customers faced indefinite delays. Workers in American plants faced furloughs. And the once dominant electric vehicle manufacturer now stood on the brink of something no one imagined possible: total operational failure. But the most alarming question wasn't whether Tesla could restart production.